Greetings, I'm Rob with Federal Finance CPE. Today, we will cover an introduction to the U.S. Standard General Ledger, a supplement to the Treasury Financial Manual. There are a few training objectives we are going to cover. The first is we are going to go over how to identify what the TFM is, who maintains it, and what is it used for. The next is I want you to be able to recognize the different components of the TFM. The next objective is that I want you to be able to identify the 7 sections of the USSGL and know their purpose. And finally, you're going to be able to use this knowledge to solve some federal accounting challenges. Before we start today's training, I want to introduce a character that we all know. Either we are this person right now or we were once, and that's Sarah. It's Sarah's first job as a federal accountant, and we're going to walk through some scenarios that she encounters at her first day, and we'll see if we can solve those questions with her. Let's get started. So first, why should you care about the USSGL? Well, for starters, it's the law. The Financial Management Improvement Act of 1996, or as we like to call it, FFMIA, introduced this as a requirement, as you see on the screen. Well, the purpose of FFMIA was really to provide some consistency in accounting by federal agencies from one fiscal year to the next, and for a uniform accounting standard to be used throughout the federal government. It did require federal financial management systems to enable full disclosure of financial data, which increases accountability and the credibility of federal financial management, and it builds upon the CFO Act of 1990. So if I had to use an analogy for the USSGL, it would be a GPS, because without your GPS, you'll be lost. So without this USSGL, are you going to know which accounts to use for transactions? Well, the USSGL gives you a 6-digit account for every type of GL account you could use in the federal government. Are you going to know how to post journal entries correctly? Well, luckily, the USSGL provides transaction codes, which are journal entries, and they cover almost any type of transaction you can imagine, though not all. Without the USSGL, you'll be making up your own financial statements, picking what accounts go where. Now, the USSGL provides that. It maps every single account to every single GL that it uses. And then finally, without this USSGL guiding you, how is your information going to roll up into government-wide financial statements and pictures? There are built-in edits, validations, and compliance checks in the USSGL that'll allow that. So just know, whether it's your first day on the job, or you've been here for years, you'll know the USSGL is going to be your best reference when doing federal accounting, because nobody can memorize everything. So before we dive into the USSGL, you might ask yourself, why do I need this? Well, federal accounting is different than commercial accounting, but let's go into some specifics. For one, federal agencies all follow the same accounting standards, which are set by the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board. This is not FASB, this is not GASB, this is its own accounting standard board. Another unique requirement of government accounting is budgetary control. So if you remember from your high school civics class, the legislative branch, or Congress, sets the budget for the U.S. federal government, and the executive branch executes this. Well, the legislative branch needs to have accurate and reliable budgetary reports and controls to see how the executive branch is executing what they've set. So the USSGL has a whole set of budgetary accounts which self-balance to allow you to track both what are the resources available and what are the status of those resources throughout the years. Next is financial reporting, and then consolidation. So as a federal entity, you do need to produce financial statements. Many of this happens at the department level. So you're going to be consolidating multiple agencies together, and you're going to need to use the same mapping of general ledger accounts if you want something that's accurate, and reliable. And not only just for your department, but ultimately these accounts and information get rolled up into the government-wide financial statements. So you really have to ask yourself, how could you accomplish this goal of consolidating and reporting so many large entities if you didn't have one resource that set what to post when? Well, lucky for us, what we have to help us is the Treasury Financial Manual. Now, you might ask, what is the Treasury Financial Manual? It is the Department of Treasury's official publication of policies, procedures, and instructions concerning financial management in the federal government. Now, you'll see on the slide, there's a link to the website, which https://tfx.treasury.gov/TFM. I would bookmark that for future reference if I were you. But what's in the TFM? Well, there's really 4 components, or volumes. Volume 1 is specific to federal agencies. Volume 2 is going to relate to Federal Reserve banks and branches. Volume 3 is related to depositories and financial agents of the U.S. government. And Volume 4 is for other concerned parties. Now, you might ask yourself, where does the USSGL fit within one of these 4 volumes? Well, the answer might be surprising, as it's in a supplement to the TFM. But I wanted to point this out because many times on the job, you'll hear references of, hey, check the TFM or look this up in the TFM. And what people are meaning, if they're federal accountants likely, is that they want you to look at the supplement to the TFM, to the U.S. Standard General Ledger, not one of these 4 volumes. So the U.S. Standard General Ledger, we've talked about it. We talked about the purpose and who uses it. But what is it? Well, if I had to summarize it really quickly, it's going to be a uniform chart of accounts. It's going to standardize your reporting framework and how you report both transactions and how you report financial statements and consolidate each various line using the data you have. And it's ultimately created by the Treasury, the Bureau of Fiscal Services to be exact. So where can you find the USSGL? Well, if you go back to the TFM's website and add on to our previous web address, you have tfx.treasury.gov/TFM. Now we have /supplements/USSGL. And it will take you to the latest USSGL supplement. Which then, if you're curious, you might ask yourself, how is the USSGL updated? Well, at that website I just gave you is going to have the latest publication. Now, the USSGL is updated via Treasury Bulletin, and you'll be able to see this based on the bulletin number, which follows a naming nomenclature of fiscal year, dash, and then the version of the USSGL. On the screen, you can see on the right side a snip of the cover page of the U.S. Standard General Ledger Supplement in 2025, and it's actually version 6. Additionally, previously on this web page that had the latest USSGL, you notice there was a Part 1 and Part 2. And just for your awareness, those are usually going to show Part 1 is the current fiscal year and Part 2 is the next fiscal year. So you're commonly going to be focusing on Part 1 if you're just doing your day-to-day current year accounting research or accounting transactions, but just know that sometimes at the beginning of the fiscal year, they might not have posted the latest version, so you would need to go to Part 2. And also if you were looking in the future for the next fiscal year, specifically if there's new edits or new accounts being created, the Part 2 would be very useful. Okay. Now let's talk about what's actually inside the USSGL. Well, there's 7 sections, and they go like this. You have the chart of accounts, then you'll have accounts and definitions, then you'll have account transactions, following with the USSGL account attributes section. Then there's a USSGL crosswalks to standard external reports section, with a USSGL crosswalks to reclassified statements section. And then our last but in 7th section is the GTAS validations and edits section. All right. Now it's time for a little knowledge check. And to do this, we're going to check in on Sarah and see what she's encountering. So you'll see here on the slide, Sarah's next to her boss, Jim. And Jim asks her, hey, I need you to pull up the latest version of the USSGL. Have it ready for review. Since this is your first day, it'll be a great learning opportunity. Which I have to agree. And Sarah's like, not an issue. But in the back of her head, she goes, okay, I know I want the latest USSGL, but where is it? So here's the challenge. Can you help Sarah find the latest version of the USSGL? All right, let's see if we can find it ourselves. So we're going to search for the US Standard General Ledger, or USSGL. Now you'll see the first hit is the US Standard General Ledger from fiscal.treasury.gov. So this isn't the website that we knew earlier, but we can see it's from the Bureau of Fiscal Services. And there's a link here that says View TFM. So we click on that. And here it takes us to the TFM. You'll be able to see then all 4 volumes that we mentioned earlier and additional resources, which the top hit is USSGL. We'll click on that. All right, here we are. We can see we have the latest USSGL. This is 2025 TAC 06. Okay, part 1, part 2. And the website address is tfx.treasury.gov/TFM/supplements/USSGL. Brings us to our answer, which is tfx.treasury.gov/TFM/supplements/USSGL. Great job.